Hey guys, welcome to a quick video that I'll be doing about the Worlds 2023 patch that it'll be on, that everyone will be playing on for the month over the World Championship. The patch isn't actually that big, but we'll go through it all in just a second. I just want to say that, yeah, I'm doing this off stream. A lot of times my content comes from on stream stuff, but I'll be recording a lot of content for Worlds this year that you'll see dropped over the next week off stream. I feel like it helps me just like focus on the actual content itself. So let's get into it. First of all, Azir Q cooldown increase. Now this cooldown increase is only for early game, which kind of hurts his lane phase a little bit in terms of poking. Now Azir has always been a really heavy meta champ, especially at World Championships, because he ticks a lot of boxes for what you want in draft. Safe blind pick, doesn't have many counters, can push in quite a lot of lanes, has a dash, has a playmaking ability, has incredibly good scaling. Shield helps out a little bit as well. So overall, Azir is... it's just such a powerful champion. Really big range is another one that makes Azir so strong. I think he's been meta for years and years and years. So do I expect this to take him out of pro level? Probably not. So I think he'll still be a fallback option. Now in terms of mid laners, I feel like champions like Orianna has started increasing a lot in win rate in solo queue with like the Seraph's build. Kaeya looks pretty strong as well. So I'm not sure what kind of mid-meta we'll see. I feel like this year we've had different iterations of the mid-meta, where we've had like the Nico, Annie, Lissandra mid-meta, Talia, which was kind of like roam heavy. Whereas if you look at like towards the end of playoffs, we had Talia mids, Azirs, we had even Cassante mids, with I think Chovy played into Faker as like a counter to Talia. The Nico and Annie are still kind of there a little bit, more so Nico, but not as much. Lissandra's fallen off. LeBlanc is like, has been rising in priority, but we'll get to LeBlanc in just a sec. Briar. Now, I'm not going to go through the Briar changes because she's actually disabled for Worlds. So if you want to go through the Briar changes and you want to play solo queue, you can go through that. But this is like a very Worlds pro play focused kind of patch notes rundown. Gallo R cooldown decreased by 20 seconds at every rank. Helps him out a little bit. I feel like if you're playing Gallo, if you think back to like when Gallo was pretty strong, it was during the Predator meta actually. Like you would play Gallo Predator towards bot. That was when dives on sides were really big, but the wave sync now has made it so dives have become a little bit more difficult unless you're like really over-indexing on Elise, sorry, or like really heavy mid push. Oftentimes Gallo is the champ that cheats mid waves to get to sides, kind of like baby TF in a way, where most champs push out and roam. For example, like Ryze and Talia can push, move to side, ult. Gallo is used more of like a defensive tool to cover off dives. Now you think of Faker when you think of Gallo. I think he played like 5 games in 2017 in a row against RNG or something of Gallo. But will we see Gallo? Maybe not. I think there's a lot of champions right now that can just really shut Gallo down in lane, especially like Tristana mid is one that already comes to mind. Sylas can be annoying depending on what kind of ults he can take away. Cassiopeia can be a pain in the ass. Control mages, he falls behind. And Gallo needs heavy playmaking. Like if you're playing Gallo, you need things like Camille, Rakan, champions that can go in. But nowadays, I think there's just so many ways to itemize efficiently towards defensive items like stopwatches, GAs, Zonias, whatever it is, that this kind of one-dimensional single target damage lockdown doesn't work as much like the Gallo Camille, because they get countered in lane so hard by things like, you know, Camille, for example, Jax, Fiora, Gwen can be a bit tricky. We even saw like things like Akali into it. So yeah, not sure Cannon can kind of work, depends on the game. But yeah, we'll see. This one for me is pretty big though, the GP buff. Our cooldown decreased, death sort of upgrade slow increased by 15%, and the move speed of Raise Morale, which doesn't really affect as much because he normally gets that a lot later on, is increased by 10%, so that one's not as big of a deal. I think the ult cooldown is the most important one. Now it's only 10 seconds, but GP in pro play is a really reliable scaler, and he actually can be oppressive in some matchups. So I think top meta will be really weird. Oftentimes you look at top meta throughout the end of playoffs, it's very like Renekton, Jax, Cassante, Gnar kind of. And so where does GP slot into that? Because if GP becomes OP and becomes a blind pick, then top lane meta changes a little bit. Oftentimes when a role gets a certain champion buffed in it that used to be meta, then like let's say Jace gets buffed in top, then all of a sudden top meta changes. You know, like if Jace is blind pickable, then you can play things like more like Malphite or whatever into Jace, or you can play like riskier lanes, like you can play something like Camilla, I don't know, that can all in Jace and try and put him behind. But then blinding Gnar and Kennen becomes a lot harder because Jace is meta and that counters him. So the GP change for me is kind of interesting as to terms of like what's going to happen to top. But also what can happen to mid. I feel like GP mid can also work. We've seen a little bit of it, mainly by players like No Way For You. But I know certain players around the world can definitely play it in mid. But if it's 99% what I expect it to be is mainly top side, then I actually think this hurts the West a little bit, because if I think of GP, I think of Eastern top laners. I think Bin GP would be insta-locked. Doran has already played a few games of GP. I think he's one of the only players in a major region to play GP across the world, but he's been playing it a little bit. And I think, yeah, Eastern top laners get a bit of a buff from GP. The cooldown reduction of the R is really important, because oftentimes as GP, what you do is you ult waves on lane swaps for herald spawns, so you can like cheat a TP. If they lane swap top to try and like herald your tower, or like 4-man dive you can just GP ult the wave and run away. Similarly, you can swap bot and GP ult the wave on the weak side, and your team can start forcing a top tower. So the ult cooldown is a really hard one to put your finger on as to whether it'll affect pro play or not. I'm going to say on the safe side, we won't see that much GP, but this champ, I've seen a lot of players playing it in solo queue, could become a last pick, for example, on R5 or a blind pick if a lot of tops are out. So the Jhin R minimum physical damage is increased. It's actually quite a hefty buff to Jhin in terms of like minimum physical damage. The problem with Jhin in pro play is he's... How do I like simulate it? He's kind of like... Sorry if I flashbanged you. If this is a graph of like scaling, I feel like Jhin is just like that, whereas most AD carries that you play in pro play are sort of like that, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to describe it. He's strong early, strong mid, decent late, pretty decent, especially if he has things like fleet and a lot of crit. But more times we see like this lethality Jhin stuff, and that falls off. He's always really struggled against tanks, and his fight impact has never really been as intense as champions like, you know, the recent release of Zeri, Xayah, Kaeya, like they have like, these champs have either really heavy defensive tools with a lot of scaling and they're very auto attack based, or they have a lot of mobility and self playmaking like Kaeya, Zeri. So maybe we'll see Jhin. I feel like Jhin is like that supportive champ, and oftentimes Jhin is picked into champions like Draven and Caitlyn because he's a lane suppressor. But I feel like Ashe is a better option right now, in my opinion. So I doubt we'll see Jhin that much. Maybe this buff does so much to his ult that it becomes so OP in mid-game that the game becomes playable for Jhin. Because, I mean, the game is very heavily decided in mid to late game nowadays, where you're either fighting for early dragons or you're contesting soul points, and whoever's kind of like gotten to the right break point wins. So, yeah, Jhin could be a pick. I doubt it, though. We'll see. The LeBlanc changes, TLDR, what they've done is they're trying to kill AD LeBlanc. Now, I made a video on AD LeBlanc saying that I heard in scrims that AD LeBlanc was being played a lot. And then the day after, Riot said that they were nerfing it, and everyone was like losing their mind about it, and the pick rate went up. But already pro players are playing it in solo queue, so I think a lot of people picked up on the champ being strong. They're trying to kill AD LeBlanc. But in the meantime of killing AD LeBlanc with AD growth decreases and attack speed decrease and growth and stuff like that, whatever it may be, they've actually buffed her W and her E AP ratio by 5%. Her mana growth is down a lot, though, and her mana regen as well. So that's really annoying, but she's... I think this is targeting AD LeBlanc, because AD LeBlanc rushes Static Shiv, whereas most Mage LeBlancs rush Lost Chapter. So if your mana growth and mana regen is down, if you're building attack speed in AD, then you go faster in lane, obviously, right? Whereas if you're building Lost Chapter, they seem to think that it's fine to still play AP LeBlanc with these nerfs. But we'll see. AP LeBlanc could work. Now, LeBlanc can be picked into mages like Azir, Orianna, and Cassio. But you need a jungler that has like heavy gank setup, and you can play around those gank setups pretty well to move you into side lanes. But yeah. Lee Sin, there's a bit of a typo here in the patch note. I was going over it on stream very quickly and briefly, but it says E magic damage increased, but it's actually decreased because they're trying to nerf top lane or solo lane Lee Sin. I actually didn't see much solo lane Lee Sin. His base armor is up by 2, and his spell vamp and lifesteal is up by 5% early, and it's up by 1% at full max rank because you max W second on Lee Sin. Now, obviously, I play a lot of Lee Sin. This W buff helps a little bit, and the armor buff as well, because what happens is you're 1 to 3, level 1 to 3, red Raptor Krugs, red Krugs Raptor. You actually get kind of low HP, so this covers that off quite nicely. And I suppose it helps you in like early fights with Conquer and W, but Yeah, Lee Sin is not really that high on the jungle tier list right now. Lee Sin is a jungle champ, needs... I think there's 3 types of junglers. There's carry junglers, which need facilitators. Like, a very easy example is like, I don't know, Evelynn, Hecarim, Kindred. Very, like, resource-heavy junglers. There's champions which need... like, they're in the middle, kind of like. If you have, like, hyper carry junglers that need supportive champions, like Karma or Gallo or whatever. Then you have, like, the Lee Sins of the world and the Talias that need, like, you know, Talia needs, like, Renekton or Set. She needs stuns. Whereas Lee Sin is the opposite. He's the exact same role, but he can't give the stuns. He needs someone to give him the stuns. So, like, Lissandra, LeBlanc are really great for TF, are really great for Lee Sin, you know. These champions are great. And then you have the supportive junglers, like Sejuani, Maokai, Zac, whatever it may be. Rel, that don't really need any setup and they're very self-sufficient and can fall behind. So that's the 3 tiers of junglers. And Lee Sin right now, in terms of the mid-meta, there's not that much Annie anymore or Nico or, you know, those kind of champs like TF, Lissandra, LeBlanc. It's more like control mage-esque. So not sure if Lee Sin will support that very well. Control mage-esque champs normally need like early game to mid-game bridges or like good team fighters. Lee Sin is a bit of that, but not so much. Lissandra W root duration increase. That's a really nice buff, especially if they're buffing AP LeBlanc, because Lissandra is like the hardest counter to LeBlanc in lane. I think Lissandra is a really powerful pick. What I've seen the most of Lissandra recently is Lissandra into Rakan support, which I think is actually a monster pick right now. Lissandra support in general. So maybe we'll see more of that. But Lissandra is a really easy fallback option of our team lacks CC. It doesn't have a bad matchup mid in a sense if you last pick it. The worst matchups for Lissandra, I've played this champ so much in competitive in like season 7, 8. The horrible matchups are Orianna, Azir, Cassio. These 3 matchups for Lissandra are just so frustrating because you're outranged, you're outscaled, and they outdamage you, and you're really useful in 2v2s and 5v5s, but in lane phase it's horrible. So I don't expect to see Lissandra become a blind pick, but definitely can be picked into other champs that aren't control mages. Nuno EAP ratio increased. AP Nuno is getting quite popular despite not being very strong at Kesha. Magic damage of Snowball ratio is increased by 5%, and the maximum total damage is increased by quite a hefty amount of percent. We won't really see Nuno at Worlds. If you build AP Nuno at a World Championship, you might be trolling, but yeah, so this is an increase in ratios, not flat damage, and when I was watching, the only example I have for you is Kesha, because he was playing in the Druid Cup. He was playing Nuno in some of the games that it was open, and he was even playing tank Nuno. So if you're building tank Nuno, the AP percent ratio doesn't really matter. So yeah, I don't think we'll see Nuno at Worlds. Health growth increase, W cooldown decrease. That's really nice. Pike buffs are always useful. Pike's position in the meta, I feel like, is a weird one. It's almost like when you have a pick comp / like a heavy kill mid jungle, that Pike facilitates that a lot, but can make you fall behind a lot because you oftentimes don't contest the push as Pike. Pike's contest on push is level 1 to 3, where you can all in with Halo Blades. Past 4 or 5, you really start to just want to roam around this Pike. Now, you know, you want things like self-sufficient AD carries, like Ezreal Pike is an easy one where Ezreal can just farm for free, and Pike's map pressure leverages the team enough that Ezreal can farm safely on the tower without him not being there, because they're not sure where Pike is. And if Pike's pressuring mid, for example, and his mid laner has push, then you can't dive the Ezreal because they can collapse on you. So Pike is like, instead of leveraging lane pressure, he leverages map pressure, and obviously can be a great playmaker in team fights. Will we see Pike at Worlds? I think we'll see a few games of Pike at Worlds. I don't think it'll be like super high prio, but can work in a lot of scenarios. Rek'Sai. I didn't actually know the Rek'Sai got changed on this patch, but here we are. Passive heal decrease, Q damage decrease, W unburrow movement speed decrease, W unburrow base damage increase. Yeah, sounds like solo queue. I think Rek'Sai's win rate in solo queue has always been really high in a lot of elos. It's very simple. Solo queue, 3 camps, flash W, you get a kill. Happy days, Rek'Sai, stop engages. We won't see Rek'Sai at Worlds, I think. I think the last time I saw Rek'Sai in a competitive game was when I saw Cuz play Hullbreaker Rek'Sai. That was disgusting. Renekton, base magic resistance decreased by 4. Now, Renekton is becoming one of the strongest blind picks. Oftentimes, you see like a Renekton Cassante handshake, Renekton Gnar handshake at times if Jax is down and stuff like this. We see champion players like 369 play Gragas into it. Doesn't really hurt Renekton too much, I think. I think in pro play, we'll still see Renekton. His damage is absurd. His mid game is insane. This base MR nerf just hurts him a little bit against AP champs, obviously. But yeah. Syndra Q magic damage increased. Now I actually think Syndra is quite a strong champion already. Now it's 5 flat damage, which isn't the most, but I think Syndra right now is a really good champ. Syndra opens up a lot of options because she has a really oppressive jungle mid 2v2 and a lot of oppressive mid-game damage, and the way she's been reworked a long time ago to have like 2 Qs and stuff like that, bigger stun, has really helped her scaling. Oftentimes you see Syndra in late game fights, she will save her E, like early to mid game, QE is a very simple Syndra combo, but in late game fights she'll Q, and then she'll like ult you to get like all her balls down, and then she'll E and she'll get a massive stun ever since the E upgrade changes on her rework. So yeah, Syndra team fighting is actually a little bit better. Good champ. Twitch's missile speed has gone up. Now the problem with Twitch is his lane phase is just, it's really not it. You can't contest the push much. Twitch needs an enchanter by his side to be strong in the late game. Twitch Lulu, Twitch Yumi. It's just a worse version of Zeri it's just a Zeri without moves, without a dash really, and a weaker lane phase. So I don't expect to see Twitch. Can work in some scenarios if there's a lot of AD bans and they have a weak support. But if they have like Nautilus, Leona, Rel, Maokai jungle, any form of lockdown, Twitch in pro play, locked and dead. Zeri base move speed reduced by 5. Don't think this does too much to her. Zeri is already slowly falling off a little bit as for entering the Xayah Kaisa meta in more recent months. Zeri still definitely playable. We're seeing like a lot of Xayah, Kaisa, Ezreal, Draven kind of right now. Will we see Zeri? I don't think so. Yes, I do, sorry. I don't think this buff nerf does much to her, I mean. This is a big change. 300 gold off random wins? That's crazy, I think. That's a really efficient item now. 2700 gold, I think the item... I don't know what the numbers are. I don't really do math. But that's a really nice change for tanks. Obviously, the random wins change. Especially if Tristana mid is still playable and they're playing double AD carries. Or Kindred becomes meta, right? It's just a really nice item. Yeah, I'm not a big spreadsheet person. I feel like this might sound really stupid, but ever since being a pro, the way when you play a game, it's almost like a language, and you learn the game so much that you become fluent in a sense, and then everything comes down to like sensations and feelings of how you think things will turn out in fights, items, builds, and it never really comes down to like the math of it. Maybe there's like subconscious math behind it. You just kind of like feel what's right and wrong, and you can kind of tell. I don't know, maybe it's like an F1 driver or whatever. When they're driving a car, they can kind of feel what's right and wrong. I think that's what a lot of pros do these days. And these things, you know, these changes on the patch, when they play the champion, they can kind of feel the difference and they'll know if it's right or wrong. So I don't know what the exact goal efficiency number is, but from using random wins and buying it, I think this makes it a lot easier. Armor increased by 5 on Seekers. That's great. I think Zhonya's is a very easy second item option for a lot of mages / junglers if they're AP. Zhonya's has always been a pretty strong item. We've even seen it on Varus AD carry, right? When you build the AP item build, that 5 armor increase. Nice QOL buff. I think that got changed a long time ago when AD mids were prevalent and mages could just rush Seeker's first item and there was nothing you could do. So that buff is really helpful. Static Shiv nerf. 50 damage. Decrease the minions. Now obviously again hitting LeBlanc, which was a big prevalent pick. They've nerfed Static a lot now. I think the one champion this doesn't hurt as much is Zeri. I think Zeri will still build Static Shiv, but for example Kaisa, we won't see Shiv Kaisa anymore. The new build on Kaisa right now that players have been playing is Umbral Glaive Kaisa into Duskblade into Nashor's Tooth. Now you get a Q upgrade very early on when you get Umbral, which is quite a cheap item. You get Umbral Dirk, you have Q upgrade, and your isolated damage is very high, just your attack speed is very low until you get that third item Nashor's, but your damage is incredibly high. So the new Kaisa build that's kept her meta is Umbral, Duskblade, Nashor's Tooth. ARAM adjustments. There's been a lot of ping adjustments, very controversial. You can't see certain pings anymore. You can barely see anything in terms of like gameplay and solo queue anymore, but that doesn't affect pro play. But yeah, I hope that, oh my god, my chat's on the screen. I hope that video helped you with the Worlds patch. I think everything will be pretty similar and nothing too surprising in terms of changes. I think the GP thing will be interesting. AP LeBlanc will be interesting. Syndra can be a big pick. Lee Sin I don't think will get hit as much. And yeah, I hope the video was information. I don't know what the word is. Anyway, I got a lot of Worlds content coming up, from tier lists to a big, like, major region rundown that I'll do about all the teams across all regions. That'll be here soon, as well as a special surprise, like, super video that I've been working on for a long time. So I hope people like that. Anyway, big kiss. Make sure to subscribe. See you soon.